treasure is a prevalent literary trope often associated with pirates. According to popular belief, pirates would bury their stolen riches in remote locations with the intention of returning later, frequently guided by a treasure map. In English literature, 3 notable works gave rise to the birth of the buried pirate treasure motif: Wolfert Webber or Golden Dreams by American writer Washington Irving, The Gold Bug by American writer Edgar Allan Poe, and Treasure Island by Scottish novelist Robert Louis Stevenson. In 1911, American author Ralph D. Payne conducted a comprehensive survey of known and alleged buried treasure stories, compiling them into a book dubbed The Book of Buried Treasure. In his survey, Payne identified a recurring motif across all these tales: a lone survivor of a pirate crew who, despite being unable to return to the treasure, manages to preserve a map or information about its location. Often on his deathbed, this survivor entrusts a map or details to a friend or shipmate. This individual then embarks on a quest for the treasure, only to fail in their search and subsequently passing the legend to yet another unwitting seeker. But this raises the question, did pirates really bury treasure? To address this question, we must refer to a book published in 1724, aptly titled A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. This influential work, published in Britain, contains biographies of contemporary pirates and played a significant role in shaping popular perceptions of piracy. The author, writing under the pseudonym Captain Charles Johnson, is widely believed to have used a pen name. It is widely assumed that English novelist Daniel Defoe, famous for his 1719 novel Robinson Crusoe, is the real author. Yet, despite numerous historical investigations, the true identity of the author remains unknown. A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates introduced several elements that later became staples in pirate literature, including the depiction of pirates with missing eyes or limbs, the concept of buried treasure, and the designation of the pirate flag as the Jolly Roger. The author specifically attributes the naming of the Jolly Roger to 2 pirates, the Welsh pirate Bartholomew Roberts in June 1721 and the English pirate Francis Briggs in December 1723. The book also elevates more colourful figures such as the notorious English pirates Blackbeard and Calico Jack to near mythical status. The book offers a foundational account of the lives of many pirates who remain well known today, and has been profoundly influential in shaping contemporary perceptions of piracy. Scottish novelist Robert Louis Stevenson, author of Treasure Island, and J.M. Barrie, creator of Peter Pan with its character Captain Hook, both cited Johnson's A General History of the Pirates as a significant influence on their work. Notably, Stevenson even borrowed the name Israel Hands from a list of Blackbeard's crew featured in Johnson's book. Edward Teach, commonly known as Blackbeard, is widely recognised as one of the most notorious pirates to have buried treasure. By early 1718, Teach had established a residence in South Carolina where he managed a plantation and required a secure location for his amassed wealth. This practice was somewhat atypical for pirates of his time. Nevertheless, he returned to his piratical ways and was ultimately killed by bounty hunters later the same year. A General History of the Pirates includes an anecdote suggesting that Teach did indeed bury treasure. The night before he was killed, he sat up and drank till the morning with some of his own men and the master of a merchant man, and having had intelligence of the 2 sloops coming to attack him as had been before observed, one of his men asked him, in case anything should happen to him in the engagement with the sloops, whether his wife knew where he'd buried his money. He answered that nobody but himself and the devil knew where it was, and the longest liver should take all. This account is further supported by a report published in 1737 by British naval officer Clement Downing. In this report, Downing documents an interview with an eyewitness, either a former associate or contemporary of Blackbeard, who around 1722 provided information regarding the buried treasure. This Anthony told me he had been amongst the pirates and that he belonged to one of the sloops in Virginia when Blackbeard was taken. He informs me that if it should be my lot ever to go to York River in Maryland near an island called Mulberry Island, provided we went on shore at the watering place, where the shipping used most commonly to ride, that there the pirates had buried considerable sums of money in great chests, well clamped with iron plates. As to my part, I never was that way, nor much acquainted with any that ever used those parts, but I've made inquiry and informed there is such a place as Mulberry Island. If any person who uses those parts should think it worthwhile to dig a little way at the upper end of a small sandy cove where it is convenient to land, he would soon find whether the information I had was well grounded. Fronting the landing place are 5 trees, amongst which he said the money was hid. I cannot warrant the truth of this account, but if I was ever to go there, I would by some means or other satisfy myself, as it cannot be a great deal out of my way. If anybody should obtain any benefit by this account, if it please God they ever come to England, 'tis hoped they'll remember the author for his information. However, Blackbeard was not the only pirate reputed to have buried treasure. At least 3 other pirates are also said to have hidden their wealth: William Kidd, Francis Drake, and Roberto Cofresi. Scottish privateer William Kidd is rumoured to have temporarily buried some of his treasure on Gardiner's Island near Long Island before proceeding to New York City in 1699. Originally commissioned by England as a privateer, Kidd's activities had increasingly diverged into outright piracy. He hoped that his hidden treasure might serve as a bargaining tool to avoid punishment. However, his efforts were unsuccessful, and Kidd was executed as a pirate in 1701. In 1573, English explorer and privateer Francis Drake ambushed and seized a treasure-laden Spanish mule train in the jungles of Panama. Unable to carry the loot back to their ships while evading the Spanish, Drake and his crew buried the majority of the treasure, hoping to prevent its recovery. However, the Spanish forces swiftly located and retrieved the treasure. Additionally, Roberto Cofresi, one of the final Caribbean pirates from Puerto Rico, claimed in 1825 to have buried treasure after his capture, intending to use it as a bribe to secure his release. These claims, however, were not taken seriously, and Cofresi was executed. While these examples are frequently cited as the primary instances of treasure burial by pirates, it is now evident that Blackbeard should also be included in the list. Furthermore, there were other albeit less well documented instances of treasure burial among pirates. In the same account referenced earlier by Clement Downing, there is mention of the pirate James Plantain, who was active in the Indian Ocean. Plantain is notable for using his pirate fortune to establish a brief-lived kingdom on Madagascar during the 1720s. To protect his wealth and valuables, he regularly hid them whenever he engaged in warfare, as it was the only method he found effective for their safekeeping. Another example is from 1687, when Henry Pitman, an escaped indentured servant, was marooned on the Salta Tigres Island in the Caribbean. After Henry Pitman, a doctor, was rescued, the remaining members of his group continued to stay on the island and were subsequently joined by 8 additional buccaneers. Among these newcomers, 3 buccaneers subsequently robbed their fellow castaways at gunpoint. They justified their actions by accusing the others of having hid their monies in the sand and did not keep it in their chests, despite the fact that the money had been concealed precisely to protect it from theft by their own companions. This incident is detailed in Henry Pitman's book, A Relation of the Great Sufferings and Strange Adventures of Henry Pitman, published in 1689. Alongside this, there are still other believable accounts of pirates burying treasure besides the ones already mentioned. It was common practice for people to hide and bury their valuables to prevent them from being seized by pirates, which further drove the search for buried treasure. Based on the available evidence, it is reasonable to conclude that pirates did in fact frequently bury and conceal treasure under certain circumstances. These circumstances typically included the inability to transport valuables, when pirates lacked the means to transport their loot quickly, as was the case with Francis Drake. A permanent base of operations. Pirates with a permanent base, such as Blackbeard and James Plantain, buried their treasures to secure them while they were engaged in piracy elsewhere with the intention of returning. Bargaining with authorities. Some pirates like William Kidd and Roberto Cofresi buried their treasure in hopes of using it as leverage in negotiations with authorities if they were caught. Fear of theft by companions. Pirates such as those encountered by Henry Pitman in 1687 buried their treasure out of fear of being robbed, even by their own crew members. And lastly, avoiding detection by authorities. Pirates also hid their stolen wealth to prevent its discovery by authorities, as was possibly the case with William Kidd. It is important to note that treasure burial was not exclusive to pirates. Roman historian Cassius Dio records an instance from the early 2nd century when Dacian king Decebalus diverted the course of the Sagittaea River in Transylvania, Romania to bury vast amounts of gold and silver in the riverbed. After the treasure was concealed, Decebalus ordered the river to be restored and executed the slaves who had worked on the project. However, one of his nobles later disclosed the treasure's location to the Romans. Likewise, Byzantine historian Jordanus recounts a story about the Visigothic king Alaric I, who in 410 buried his treasure in the Bicento River in Calabria, southern Italy. And who can't forget The Curse of Oak Island, a multi-season reality television series that documents a team of treasure hunters searching for legendary treasure on Oak Island, located off the coast of Nova Scotia. Extensive excavation efforts on Oak Island have been ongoing since 1795, driven by the belief that one or more pirate captains concealed substantial valuables there. These efforts are rooted in earlier legends of buried pirate treasure in the region. As of the recording of this video, no treasure has been reported as having been discovered on Oak Island. The treasure of Lima is repeatedly buried treasure on Cocos Island in the Pacific, allegedly abandoned by pirates. The origins of this treasure trace back to the 16th century during Spain's control of Lima following its conquest of the Incas. Over the centuries, the Roman Catholic Church had amassed a significant collection of valuables in Lima. In the early 19th century, Spain faced increasing challenges with its South American colonies due to various independence wars. Lima was no exception and came under severe pressure in 1820, ultimately leading to its evacuation. As a precautionary measure, the Viceroy of Lima ordered the transportation of the city's immense wealth to Mexico for safekeeping. This treasure included precious jewels, candlesticks, and 2 life-size solid gold statues of Mary and the infant Jesus, with an estimated value ranging from $12 to $60 million. Captain William Thompson, commander of the ship Mary Dear, was entrusted with transporting the treasure to Mexico. However, Thompson and his crew succumbed to temptation, turning to piracy. They killed the guards and accompanying priests, disposing of their bodies overboard. Thompson and his men then sailed to Cocos Island, off the coast of present-day Costa Rica, where they allegedly buried the treasure. Following this, they decided to disperse and remain hidden until the situation died down, with plans to reunite later to divide the spoils. The Mary Dear was eventually captured and its crew was put on trial for piracy. All crew members except for Captain William Thompson and his first mate James Alexander Forbes were executed, as Thompson and Forbes agreed to lead the Spanish authorities to the stolen treasure in exchange for their lives. They guarded the Spanish as far as Cocos Island, but subsequently escaped into the jungle when they arrived. Both Thompson and Forbes, along with the treasure, were never seen again. It is believed that Thompson eventually returned to Newfoundland with the assistance of a whaling ship, while Forbes settled in California, achieving success as a businessman, but never returning to the island again. Lastly, the only authenticated treasure chest in the United States, once owned by English privateer Thomas II, is preserved at the Pirate Soul Museum in St. Augustine, Florida. Thus, the concept of buried treasure has a long historical precedent, with some individuals and pirates indeed burying valuables during turbulent periods, often leaving them unrecovered due to their untimely deaths. However, the notion of secret treasure maps appears to be largely a literary creation. Common sense suggests that creating a map to indicate the location of hidden treasure would be impractical and risky, as it would be far safer and simpler to rely on one's memory. This hasn't made Jack. If you're digging up buried treasure right now, please leave some of it in the comments down below.